welcome back to Bumblebee. I'm Taylor McWaters.
And I'm Kyle McWaters.
And here, we're gonna get lucky tonight. I feel it's luck is in the air, dare I say.
Top 10 luckiest people in history who survived the impossible.
Let's do it. Starting our list off at number 10, Juliane Koepcke. Miss Juliane, okay, she is a 2-for-1 when it comes to survival stories. I'm starting our list off hot here. Her story starts out on Christmas Eve back in 1971. When she was quite young, she was on Lanza Flight 508. Now the plane was struck by lightning, which is an actual nightmare, and I didn't think that could even happen, to be honest with you, so now I'm terrified. But the plane started to disintegrate midair, worst case scenario. She was still strapped to her seat 2 miles above the Peruvian rainforest, yet somehow she landed and survived. She was injured, of course, full of bruises, a broken collarbone, yada yada, just the horrible worst case scenario, but she was alive, and in fact she was the only person who had been on the flight that was still alive. How incredible is that? But now, she was in the wilderness, right? And all she had with her was just a bit of candy for food that she got from the flight. Juliane found a small stream which she began to wade in, go follow it downstream to see and hope that it ends somewhere with some people, but the insects in the jungle were eating her alive, and this next part's a little bit gross here, but maggots had infected her arm, right? It's almost getting worse as we go on. Juliane ended up coming across a sort of encampment where she found a few supplies, and she was pretty smart here. She was able to give herself a little bit of first aid, which included pouring gasoline on said infected arm, which then led to all the disgusting creatures living in it. They all came pouring out. Then just a few hours later, a few lumber workers thankfully found her and gave her first aid treatment, better treatment than the gasoline, and then took her to an area that was more populated. In 2000, her story was told through the documentary titled Wings of Hope, which was directed by Werner Herzog, who took particular interest in this story because, one, it's obviously incredible, but two, he had a seat booked on that flight and he would have been on it if it wasn't for a last-minute change of plans.
Number 9. No Man's Land. Richard Norris Williams II was an American tennis player and one of the most infamous RMS Titanic survivors. Williams was born in Geneva, Switzerland, and started playing tennis around the age of 12. Naturally gifted at this, his passion became his career, and by 1911, Williams had won the Swiss championship. A year later, he joined Harvard's team. Yeah, this guy was good. This guy played for Harvard. He and his father Charles were traveling first class on the ocean liner when, of course, as we all know, struck an iceberg and sank. This guy was badass though. Ready? During the chaos of the first hour, he managed to free a man trapped underwater by kicking in a door. Yeah, right out of the movie. After losing his father right in front of his own eyes, he dove in and held onto the side of a lifeboat, accepting his fate. After climbing in, he spent several hours knee-deep in the freezing water, which left his legs so severely frostbitten that the rescue ship's doctor wanted to amputate them immediately. Williams, stating that he was an athlete, decided to just get up and walk it off. Got up and started lapping the ship until the circulation just came back to him. Later that year, he went on to win his first US tennis championship, then went on to continue crushing Olympics since, and even earning him a spot in the Hall of Fame.
Number 8. 2 missed flights. Back in 2014, there were 2 plane crashes. These tragic crashes were of course all over the media. You probably remember them. I remember vividly hearing about them. And I also remember hearing about Martin de Jong. I'll get into that in just a second. But in 2012, the first plane was sadly shot down over Ukraine, and the second plane landed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. And to this day, it's still talked about. It's quite a mystery what exactly happened. But lives were lost. These questions will never stop coming in. One detail that we do know that connects both crashes, other than the fact that both incidents involved the same airline company, one wild detail here is a man named Martin de Jong. The Dutch cyclist was scheduled to take both of these flights. Now in both scenarios, Martin bumped his ticket when cheaper options were available. So he cheated death twice initially. This is unbelievable. Also still, we have no idea what happened to the plane. Like, that's still in the air. We're still talking about that.
Number 7. Armbar. Every time I use a butter knife, I think about this one. Could I do it, you know? Aaron is an American mountaineer, mechanical engineer, and motivational speaker. His infamous mountaineering accident was an amazing near-death experience story leading to his autobiography, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. Amazing title, Aaron. And of course the 2010 film, 127 Hours. In 2002, he moved to Aspen to pursue a life of climbing mountains, starting his goal of climbing all of Colorado's 14ers, mountains with 14,000 feet of altitude or higher. In 2003, while Aaron was climbing alone through the Utah canyons, a suspended boulder dislodged while he was climbing down, smashing against him, crushing and pinning his right arm to the canyon wall. Assuming that he would die stuck, he spent 5 days trying to pry and pull, but no luck. The now dehydrated and delirious Ralston knew what he would have to do. do. On the 4th day, in order to free his arm, he would have to cut through and free himself from it. Ugh. He carved his name, date of birth, and presumed time of death into the sandstone canyon wall with his pocket knife, and with the same dull, broken multi-tool, took a deep breath, broke his arm, and then proceeded to cut through and amputate it, keeping himself alive.
Number 6, the Hedgehog. This is one of the greatest stories of all time. This hedgehog just stepped in and saved a life. Sonic to the rescue, we love it. This story comes from an anonymous user online. It's so bizarre, so I highly doubt that it's made up. Let's do this, here we go. A hedgehog saved my life when I was in college. Great start to a story. I'm hooked. I used to work night shifts and cycle home around 4 a.m. There was a long hill to bike down, and then a bend in the road, and then a big hill to ride up. So I would usually bike around the bend full speed and rely on my hearing and the glare of the headlights to see if anyone was coming. One night, I was cycling home with headphones in because I had a bad shift. I wasn't really paying attention. I was going along at full speed when I saw a hedgehog in the road. How lovely is that? And then I braked just before the bend. Usually, I would have just dodged the hedgehog, as if he always appears, I love that. But the song I was listening to just made me feel like stopping and watching it for a second. Nice, it was probably some REO Speedwagon, I bet, something beautiful. Just as I pulled up, a UPS truck came around said bend at full speed with its headlights off. I wouldn't have even felt a thing. Now sadly, the hedgehog bit the bullet. The Grim Reaper did not come home empty-handed, that's for sure, but I'm glad you're okay. Thanks for sharing, that was wild.
Number 5, Wilson! Jose Salvador Alvarenga is a Salvadoran fisherman and author who was found in 2014 on and near the Marshall Islands after spending 14 months adrift in a fishing boat in the Pacific Ocean. He survived mainly on the diet of raw fish, turtles, small birds, sharks, and rainwater. And he didn't even use hooks or rods. Guy just barehanded everything that he ate. Apparently he would make a trap between his hands with food, and when a fish swam in between them, he would just clamp them shut. Yeah, this guy is a man. He was apparently out on an overnight deep-sea fishing trip when his boat was caught in a destructive 5-day storm, leaving him with only a handful of basic supplies and little food. Alvarenga's story was heavily reported worldwide despite initial criticism from skeptics, the whole vitamin C thing. He's the first person in recorded history to have survived in a small boat lost at sea for more than a year. He apparently swam clutching a raft to shore on small islands that is a part of the Marshall Islands in the Pacific before 2 locals found him naked, clutching a knife and barely speaking in Spanish. He was quickly hospitalized on the island before making a full recovery and eventually flying home to his family in El Salvador. This is the real Castaway, except no island, you know? Just seasick every day. Can you imagine? A whole year by yourself just clinging on to a little dinghy?
Number 4, turn it up. Okay, Kyle and I love blasting music. We'll let a song finish after we park before we leave the car every single time. You gotta let it play out, right? That's why this next story here caught my attention. It's 5 years old, it's since gained a lot of momentum online via the wonderful world of Reddit. Seen a lot of great stuff on that site, it's a good one. But it's an example of why you should always wear your seatbelts and B, always let the song finish. They say, I stayed in my car to listen to the end of the news on the radio after parking up. As I turned off the ignition, someone speeding lost control of their car and skidded straight into the back of mine, driving it 4 meters forward and through the cars in front. Tore the back of mine and rode off 2 other cars as well. I got a bit of whiplash and was rather dazed for a couple of days. The other driver was banned and charged with a string of driving offenses, of course. If I hadn't stopped to listen to the radio, I'd have been halfway out the car instead of restrained inside of it, and the other driver would have had manslaughter added to the charges. Yeah, news, podcast, Bruno Mars, whatever it is, let it finish, let it play out. Unless it's like the Joe Rogan Experience. Those are like 4.5 hours. You gotta maybe hit pause at some point, one point or another.
Number 3, free falling. Vesna Vulović was a Serbian flight attendant who, through no fault or training of her own, holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute. Not on purpose, of course. Over 10,000 meters. Yeah, she was the sole survivor after a briefcase bomb exploded in the baggage compartment of a JAT Flight 367 January 1972, causing it to crash near Czechoslovakia. Vulović spent days in a coma and was hospitalized for months. She suffered a fractured skull, 3 broken vertebrae, both broken legs, broken ribs, and a fractured pelvis, resulting in her temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. Vulović made an almost complete recovery, walking only with a small limp. Dude, I got hit in rugby years ago, I still can't crack it right, you know what I mean? How did she get by?
Number 2, Hodges Meteorite. These happen pretty often, but luckily, most of the time it doesn't, wipe out everybody and everything, including the dinosaurs. Thanks for taking one for the team back in the day, dinos. We love it. Back in 1954, residents in Talladega County, Alabama, noticed a ball of fire heading towards them. Remember, this is the 50s. We didn't have Twitter. We couldn't warn people that a meteor was possibly going to take us all out. We had no idea. We just kind of watched. So we're like, well, We also didn't really know how to tell if meteorites were coming, so it was alarming, a lot of factors. Especially for Anne Elizabeth Hodges, who got hit by that said space rock. Yeah, that ball of fire hit her. You may be asking, oh, was she outside stargazing, doing a little cosmic ritual outside at midnight? No, she was napping in her living room, and an 8-pound chunk of meteorite smashed through her roof and grazed her hip. Yeah, she got grazed by a meteor from space and only received a bruise. That's it. First human to ever get hit by a meteorite. Period. What a flex that is. Imagine putting that on Tinder. Also, we're glad you're okay. This is blowing my mind. I thought orange hockey balls hurt growing up, getting one of those bruises. A space rock? A cosmic wrist shot straight through your living room? Hard pass. Hard pass.
And coming in at the #1 spot, Wonder Woman. It's December 1994 in South Africa. 27-year-old Alison Botha was just parking from a night out when a man with a large knife opened her front door, pushed her over, and told her to drive. This mysterious man forced her to go pick up another man before driving off into the night. These two garbage human beings, who do not deserve to be named, took Alison to a deserted area off-road before performing the most violent and disgusting things to her, which I will not repeat. Before leaving her alone, of course, stranded for dead. In what was almost her last moments, Alison, barely breathing, despite being disemboweled and nearly decapitated, crawled from her car to a busy road with the last might that she could muster. With the belief that her life was too valuable to let die, she saw headlights in the distance and she knew that this was her chance. With one hand holding her stomach in and one hand holding her head on, Alison got herself to the middle of the road where she was picked up by a young veterinarian student named Tian Eliard. He used his medical knowledge to keep her alive until emergency services arrived. The doctors were shocked at the state that Alison was in. At the blood loss, the doctors were scratching their heads at her strength. Not only did Alison survive, but she also remembered every detail about her two attackers, which led police right to them. The two are now spending the rest of their lives in prison while Alison uses her voice and her experience to empower and motivate others all around the world. She's a fucking hero, dude. There should be like 60 movies about her, at least.
Well, there you have it. 10 of the luckiest people who survived the impossible.
Yep, there are some heroes in this, and I'm gonna read more of these when I get home. I feel like such a wimp now after doing all these.
I know, right? I can't even like take a wrist shot to anywhere with any kind of ball. Even a sock, I hit him. Like, I'm tapped out.
And you're still my hero, buddy.
Family, right?
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm Taylor McWaters.
And I'm Kyle McWaters.
See you on Bumblebee. Bye.